What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, we had a surprising tweet that was sent out by Nintendo's corporate account, outright refuting a report from Bloomberg. And this was surprising because we've never really seen Nintendo do this, but it makes sense based on the subject of the report. We're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, as we did get some initial sales results for the game. And we're also going to be going over that big Ubisoft announcement that was talked about yesterday. Surprise, it's not Splinter Cell. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with the PlayStation 5, specifically your ability to find a PlayStation 5. I wanted to give you guys a heads up on this, as it does look like there will be a PlayStation Direct sale going on today, and it appears that Sony had sent out some invitations to take part in it. You can see this tweet from Wario64 saying, PS Direct will have another invite-only PS5 stock tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific. Last couple times had no public queue, but if they ever do one again, it would be in the afternoon around 2 p.m. Pacific time. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because they may have sent out an email to you and you just haven't checked yet, so I wanted to bring that up as a reminder. But from what I remember, we've seen some public queues go live randomly after, and most likely that's just if not enough people really showed up to the invite-only part of it. There may just be some stock, and they're like, well, okay, go ahead and start the queue up. Just wanted to let you guys know to keep an eye out this afternoon if you are still looking for a PlayStation 5, as Sony may open up a public queue, or you may have an invite in your email right now. Also, it looks like Tencent is on the move again. We can see this report here from Reuters saying Tencent snaps up British video game developer Sumo in $1.3 billion deal. Now, Sumo, we know, has done some work for Sony and Microsoft pretty recently with Sackboy: A Big Adventure on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, and also working to complete Crackdown 3. I say working to complete because they worked alongside a couple of other studios as well to get that game done. That, of course, on the Xbox and on Windows, and they've also done work on things like Team Sonic Racing and most recently Hood, Outlaws, and Legends. Now, Tencent has quietly been making several investments or just outright just buying out different studios. They have investments in like Epic, Activision, Ubisoft, Riot. So Tencent, as I've said before, is quietly just kind of making investments and picking up overall studios. Now, with Sumo, it appears that they are going to have a hands-off approach. At least that's what's being said right now, but we'll see as we go along. I guess maybe Sumo now has the ability to kind of branch off, create this big new IP if Tencent wants to make that kind of investment, or maybe Tencent has their own plans. They need a studio development team like Sumo to get it done. Oh, and we did have that update for Skate 4, and well, it makes sense why this isn't going to be at EA's event here in the next few days, because they didn't really show any gameplay or anything too meaningful. You can see the trailer here. They mostly showed some behind-the-scenes stuff, as I was kind of expecting, and they showed people's reactions to different things. I guess they were being shown, like you know, focus group, hey, what do you think of this, or here's an idea we have right now in early development. They had like just spun up the studio in January, so I wasn't even expecting a screenshot or gameplay. They don't want to show us the game before it's ready to be shown, and that makes a lot of sense, as they themselves say, hey, we don't want to mess this up. This is a big deal for Skate fans, and I completely agree. I'm not expecting Skate 4 until 2023 at the earliest. Like, this could be something that goes until like 2024. I'm hoping they can maybe show us some of the game next year possibly, but it's going to be a bit before we have this game in our hands. They did mention things like climbing, so like that's kind of cool, but otherwise, yeah, we'll just kind of have to keep our eyes out for any new details as we go along here into next year. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo's response to the report from Bloomberg. Remember, Takashi Machizuki had the report around the 7-inch OLED display and a 4K Switch. The OLED display ended up being correct. The 4K Switch we're still waiting for. Like I said, there's always next year. I feel like that's what people say every time for the Switch Pro. Anyway, it appears that Nintendo decided to respond, and after we go through their message here, it makes a lot of sense why they've done this. Now, this isn't something Nintendo really ever does. Usually when a rumor or a speculation is brought up to Nintendo, their response is, we don't comment on rumors or speculation. This one got a little too out of hand, though. We can see this on Twitter. This is Nintendo's corporate account. Remember, this account was set up specifically for news and different things going on with the corporate side of Nintendo, and from what I can tell, they're mostly using this account to speak with investors. They say a news report on July 15th claimed that the profit margin of the Nintendo Switch OLED model would increase compared to the Nintendo Switch. To ensure correct understanding among our investors and customers, we want to make clear that that claim is incorrect. They also go on a little further here to talk about another Switch maybe, but they say we also want to clarify that we just announced that Nintendo Switch OLED model will launch in October 2021 and have no plans for launching any other model at this time. That makes sense. They don't want people to think, oh, there's another Switch coming after this OLED model. Their focus for this holiday for new hardware is that OLED model. But now the question, why would they respond to this Bloomberg article? Well, they said it themselves. It comes down to that profit margin that was mentioned. And if you remember, that Bloomberg article went over the bill of materials for this new Switch, claiming that it was $10 more to create it. And that actually could be true. But if you remember in that article, it was also implied that the profit margin grew substantially. That could actually be incorrect. And based on what Nintendo's saying here, we're going to go with what Nintendo says because this is from their corporate account speaking with investors. You can't really go around telling your investors things that are not true. So what could happen here with the profit margin? Well, to be honest, sure, that bill of material, it might not be that much more to create this system from a part standpoint. You know what? It actually makes sense for OLED, considering we've had reports before, like 2 years ago at this time, that the difference in price between an LCD and a rigid OLED was becoming less and less to where it was like 20% difference 2 years ago. Now with Nintendo buying a ton of these screens, yeah, the difference in price probably isn't that drastic. But remember, things are getting more expensive when it comes to actually sourcing and putting all of these parts together. See, outside of just build of material, there's a lot of logistical stuff that has to happen to get these systems from a bunch of parts on a table or an assembly line to the store itself. That, on top of R&D, does all get added in when it comes down to the profit margin. Nintendo does not want to give off the idea that, hey, our profit margin right now on this new Switch OLED, which is selling out and it's going to be very hot this holiday, is through the roof. It's ridiculous compared to the regular Switch, because what message is that going to send to investors? That they're making an obscene amount of profit on these systems, which means as we get closer to their earnings report at the end of January that would cover when this new Switch OLED model launches, you would have different research institutions and analysts basically say, hey, wow, the profit margin was massive. Bloomberg said it. They're a respected outlet. They have their ear to the ground when it comes to parts. Obviously, they called the 7-inch OLED. So we're expecting some big things out of Nintendo when they show up, and it's not as big when it comes to profit. So that's mostly why Nintendo decided now was the time to respond to these reports, because it actually affected their investor side of things. And that's something that Nintendo has to be mindful of, and clearly they are here. So I don't know if Bloomberg's going to respond to any of this. And to be honest, Bloomberg's been taking kind of a beating recently when it comes to a lot of their reports. So I feel like less and less people are going to be paying attention to them as we go along until they start getting some things dead on accurate. And we don't have these little caveats to their reports, whether it's 4K or, oh wait, build of materials might be on, but the profit margin side is incorrect. So we'll see how this is going forward. I just don't think we're going to hear much about a new Nintendo Switch or a 4K Switch anytime soon. Like I said, we're heading towards the holiday with a Switch OLED model, and that's what Nintendo is focusing on right now. Next up, let's talk about some of the initial sales for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. It released on Friday, and we have the UK sales charts. Now remember, this released as a full $60 game on the Switch, and on Twitter, there were some varying opinions, we'll say, on if the game was worth buying and if it would sell in general. My thoughts, it's Zelda. It's probably going to sell, especially after how popular Breath of the Wild was on the Switch, there are probably people who came into the Legend of Zelda franchise with Breath of the Wild and they never even tried Skyward Sword. So to them, it's a new Zelda game. I guess I'll go ahead and pick it up. And we can take a look at the chart here in the UK, starting with Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD as number 1. And then we have F1 2021, FIFA 21, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Minecraft on the Switch, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Grand Theft Auto 5, Mario Golf Super Rush, and then Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart rounding out the top 10. Now, according to GamesIndustry.biz, it's only the 4th time a Zelda game has claimed number 1 following Link's Awakening on the Switch in 2019, Wind Waker on GameCube in 2003, and Ocarina of Time on Nintendo 64 in 1998. And that's odd because we think about Breath of the Wild as how well it sold. It was not able to claim the top spot in the UK sales charts. That's probably because it was out around the time of Horizon Zero Dawn, and obviously PlayStation had a massive install base in the UK at that time, whereas Breath of the Wild showed up on the Switch when it was first launching. So that makes some sense there. And then of course sales would taper off for Breath of the Wild for physical copies, as this is what this tracks going along. Now, when it comes to comparison to the original game on the Wii, it did sell 9% fewer boxed copies. However, if you remember, the Wii version was just physical. There was like no digital version for it. With Skyward Sword HD on the Switch, we have heard more and more reports that, yeah, people are leaning heavily into the digital side of things to where it might even be 50-50 with the physical side of the Switch currently. So it makes sense why physically Skyward Sword HD might be a little under the Wii, but we can pretty much assume that it outsold the original Skyward Sword by quite a large margin when you add in the digital side of things. But as I said, at the end of the day, it's Zelda. It's gonna sell well. Even Link's Awakening topped the charts here in the UK when it released in 2019. And it's just a second chance for Skyward Sword, a game that released on the Wii and did well enough, but for a system that has a 100 million unit install base and it only ever sold like less than 4 million copies, yeah, it was divisive when it released because of those motion controls. Still kind of is now with the button controls not being the greatest, but at least there is an option there. And I would say a revitalization almost for the franchise, with Breath of the Wild becoming a massive success for not only the Zelda franchise, but the Switch itself. But yeah, it looks like that $60 price on Skyward Sword HD was no problem, as the market has responded fairly positively so far anyway in the UK sales charts to this game. We'll see how it does in Japan with those sales charts, and then eventually the MPD sales charts here in the US. Next up, let's talk about Ubisoft's new game. That is XDefiant. That's right, it's not a Splinter Cell game, although I guess it has some representation from Splinter Cell in it, and it's not on a cell phone, so we're making some progress there with the Splinter Cell franchise. Anyway, we can take a look here. This at VGC. New Ubisoft FPS XDefiant combines Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, The Division, and more. It will be a free-to-play shooter, and we can see some of the trailer here going on a bit further with how Ubisoft describes it. A 6v6 arena combat with faction-based abilities. It's fast-paced firefights meets punk rock mosh pit. All right, that's fun. They say every faction comes equipped with traits, abilities, and an ultra to complement your playstyle. Now, we do have 4 different factions here with Splinter Cell's Echelon, that'd be Support, Ghost Recon, Breakpoint's Wolves, those are tanks, and the Division's Cleaners, that'd be Assault, and Outcasts Healers. The factions are at the heart of the game. They are inspired by maverick groups from across Tom Clancy's games and beyond. From this inspiration, we created new characters and gameplay unique to our shooter, and we'll continue to add to this diverse cast as the game evolves. Okay, it's going to be on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series XS, PC, Luna, and Stadia, with full crossplay expected at launch. They're looking to have a test for this game, like a kind of a closed beta, August 5th, so you can do signups now. They didn't have any word as to when this game will be officially launching. They just said they are working to basically still iron out any of the gameplay mechanics through play testing here, and I saw it, especially after we had that gameplay kind of put out by IGN, and I was like, okay, another free-to-play hero-style shooter, I guess. Never seen that before. But like I said, this is what Ubisoft has been wanting to do. They want more live service games. And I know they said before they will do still do single player style games as well, but I mean, I'm not really seeing it right now. I'm seeing a lot of live service games continue to come out of Ubisoft. We already heard about Assassin's Creed going in that direction, and then just here's a Tom Clancy's game that's just a first-person hero free-to-play style shooter. I mean, at least it's free-to-play, so I'll at least give it a shot just to see what it's all about, but based on other free-to-play hero shooters, I feel like I'll try it out a bit and then kind of drop it and move along. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about not necessarily an impossible port for the Switch, but certainly a surprising port for the Switch. And this kind of got out there from a site, ppe.pl, and we have some marketing slides for this game. That's Dying Light heading to the Switch. Now, Dying Light 2 is still set to come out at the end of this year, and we'll see if it makes that December release. I wouldn't be shocked if that one got pushed into next year, but we can see here, this looks like Dying Light Platinum Edition heading to the Switch. It's marked as October, and we can see some of the additional features here for the Switch with HD rumble, gyro aiming, motion controls, touchscreen, and local and online co-op. And Dying Light Platinum Edition basically just comes with like all the extra content, the DLC and everything, and it's already out on the other platforms currently, and it's a pretty cool game to head to the Switch. They have it marked at $50 and set to release October 2021 with no official release date that's been revealed just yet. And again, that's mostly because this appears to have got out a little early. I guess we'll wait for an official reveal and announcement from Techland and even the Dying Light official Twitter account. I guess sometime this week. Honestly, it's just going to be probably a Twitter drop with a trailer to check out. But it's really cool to see Dying Light head to the Switch, and they've been updating the original Dying Light for a while now. I think like earlier we just talked about the Platinum Edition, but even before that, they had some new updates come to Dying Light like earlier this year and then last year. So they've been trying to update it and keep it kind of in the news and have people continue talking about it as they head up to Dying Light 2. But if you've never checked out Dying Light before and you have a Switch, this is certainly one to keep an eye on. We're also going to have to see how it plays on the Switch because it does have some issues on like the Xbox One base and the PS4, so optimization will be critical on the Switch here. But exciting stuff there to see Dying Light finally make its way to the Switch. We'll just wait for the official announcement here anytime. And before we go to the comment of the day or tail of the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you prefer the traditional, more linear dungeon setup in Zelda games like Ocarina of Time, or the open world setup like Breath of the Wild? 58% said they prefer the open world Breath of the Wild approach. 42% said the traditional dungeon setup. And the reason I asked this is because I'm playing Skyward Sword HD right now, and while obviously the motion control is really annoying back in the day on the Wii and the tedious dialogue and all of this, the one thing that Skyward Sword had that I thought was really well done were the dungeons. And I'm going back now after Breath of the Wild to the traditional dungeon setup essentially here, and I like the traditional dungeon setup more than what I did in Breath of the Wild, which were those like smaller shrines. And obviously you have some of the larger areas that you would do with the Divine Beast, but something about the traditional dungeon setup with the Legend of Zelda series just is more enjoyable for me. So I guess the hope now going forward is that we still get like that open world Breath of the Wild, but then we do have more traditional dungeons that you go through. So I don't know, it's something I was thinking about, and I was like, let's throw up a poll and see how people side here. And I mean, Breath of the Wild did something right because yeah, people do seem to enjoy the open world style much more. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Crush Lemon saying, EA just showed that rumored Dead Space remake remaster and I'm good. And I was trying to think of what's really gonna be at this EA event this week, because all we've seen leading up to it is that a lot of these bigger studios from EA, like, they're just not going to be there. There's not going to be any Star Wars stuff there. We heard that they're obviously Skate just kind of put their development video out there. We heard BioWare's like, oh yeah, we won't be there. Won't be any Dragon Age, none of that, no Mass Effect stuff. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm like, what are they going to show? Is like Dead Space, the remaster or remake or whatever, the big reveal? And then we're going to find out more about FIFA and more about Madden and NHL. I mean, that's kind of what I'm expecting now. So expectations need to go basically to the floor in my mind for this EA event, and hey, we'll be pleasantly surprised if there's some good stuff there. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Nintendo's response to that Bloomberg report around the build of materials for the Switch, but also that profit margin? Were you surprised to see Nintendo actually comment on it? And then what about XDefiant from Ubisoft? Were you disappointed to see what it was, or maybe you're really excited for what they showed? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.